We're going to start talking about cinema therapy. Um, okay. Well, we're going to talk about cinema therapy for about 3 weeks, and then we'll get into social media and finally video games. So let's go ahead and get started. This is from the Hesley and Hesley book. Um, I have. I'll be looking at two different books dealing with cinema therapy, and we'll see if this is something that you think could possibly work. Cinema therapy is relatively new, and the reason it's relatively new is because technology hasn't been around for all that long. I know it seems to you guys that it has because it's been around all your life, but I was born in 1949, and the first cell phone, of course, wasn't invented until 1973, and it looked like a brick. It wasn't until 1993 that you could actually carry one around comfortably, and then the flip phone was invented in 2004, and the first smartphones were invented in 2007, and now, of course, we have the folding phone. The first, okay, um, cell phones really didn't become popular until the 1990s and then the early 2000s because they just weren't very efficient. As wireless networks improved, especially between 3G and 4G, 4G LTE, the technology shifted from cell phones to smartphones, and that was in the early 2000s. So before that, we were watching DVDs, and you could go to the video store and find a DVD. Video stores don't even exist anymore. In 2014, 73% of teens reported having smartphones. In 2018, 95% of teens reported having access to smartphones. According to the same study, 45% of teens reported using the internet almost constantly. Ubiquity has taken place, and the social science community, psychology especially, is years behind in dealing with the good, the bad, and the dangerous of the phenomenon. We have no idea what's going to happen. We don't know what the future is going to look like. We can only speculate. Assuming that everything is going to be okay is not a very good plan, mainly because we do see addictions, we do see problems. Potential problems. Now, one of the things that we have noticed, I have an 11-year-old grandson, and one of the things I've noticed with my grandson is that he watches videos a lot. The videos that he watches are mostly on TikTok. I think he has TikTok. Maybe he doesn't. He watches things on YouTube. He likes soccer, so he watches soccer videos. He watches people play video games, which seems a little odd to me that you would watch people play video games, but he'll watch those for hours. Now, is this good or is this bad? Well, I'm not exactly sure if it's good or bad, and we will only know in the future. Maybe for some people there's no big deal, and for other individuals it's a really big deal. I do know of an individual, and I told you this before, I know of an individual who played video games to the point that he stopped moving. And he sat in his chair. Eventually, he was in a wheelchair, and then eventually he died of a deep vein thrombosis because he wouldn't get out of his chair, and his mother wouldn't force him to do things. Cinema therapy is a therapeutic process in which clients and therapists discuss themes and characters in popular films that relate to core issues of ongoing therapy. In cinema therapy, we use film to facilitate self-understanding, to introduce options for action plans, and to seed future therapeutic interventions. So it's possible to tell your client, I think you need to watch this movie. If you watch this movie, I want you to focus on a select character. And if you and let's talk about that character next time you come in. A good example would be Garden State. Garden State is a movie from the early 20th century, 21st century, early 2000, starring Natalie Portman, Zach Braff, and Peter Sarsgaard. And that's who these three guys are. They're wearing trash bags because it was raining and they didn't have any raincoats, and they're screaming down into a sinkhole. Oh, it's about this guy. It's about Zach Braff. Zach Braff's character is depressed, and he's taking medication for bipolar disorder, not because he has bipolar disorder, and not because he's depressed, but because his father doesn't want him to fixate on the fact that he murdered his mother. As weird as that sounds, and as it turns out, of course, he didn't murder his mother. I need to issue a, I'm going to talk about all of these films. So if you've never seen them before, then I apologize. Anyway, yeah, so Zach Braff's character is being treated by his psychiatrist father for bipolar disorder, despite the fact he's never shown any symptoms of bipolar disorder. He's an actor in Hollywood, or he would be. Yeah, he's an actor, and he plays an individual that has an intellectual disability on film. And so he comes back because his mother finally dies. What happens is his mother trips and hits her head. He pushes his mother when he's 9 years old. He pushes his mother, and she trips over the dishwasher or the stove or something. And she hits her head, and she becomes a paraplegic. And so she's to some extent she's brain dead. So she lives for an extended length of time. He's in his 20s. She's been in this strange vegetative state for not a vegetable state, vegetative state for an extended length of time. And she finally dies, and he comes back from Hollywood to go to her funeral. It gets real involved after that. He meets. He goes to he's having headaches, so he goes to a doctor. And when he's at the doctor, he meets Natalie Portman's character, who has epilepsy. So she has to wear a foam hat all the time, just in case she has an epileptic seizure. It gets real strange after that. So eventually, Zach Braff decides that he's going to go off the medication because he doesn't really need it. Gets real strange. Anyway, so the idea is that he is an individual that has guilt due to the fact that he was involved in his mother's paralysis. And he meets a free spirit in Natalie Portman, and that kind of breaks him out of this funk that his father has put him in, blaming him for the problem. Anyway, okay, so that's Garden State. So cinema therapy, can it work for individuals on the reservation? And I think it can, because a lot of people watch videos, especially teenagers, younger individuals are constantly on their cell phones watching things, having them sit down for an hour and a half or 2 hours to watch a film, and to focus on a select individual that you think that they might not identify with is not the right word, but see the how this individual interacts with everyone else in the film. Films are selected for both positive and negative associations. Some films dramatize possible solutions. Others show predictable outcomes if dysfunctional patterns remain unaltered. And of course, the reason I have 13 up here is because this is a story of two individuals who are two teenage girls who were 13, of course, and they are starting to head in a really self-destructive direction. And of course, this is the predictable outcomes if the dysfunctional patterns remain unaltered. And the two of them, of course, they get their tongues pierced, which indicates that they wish to have, well, oral sex. Anyway, so the two of them one of them is very popular and the other one is not. They're one's trying to break out of her mold, but she's kind of heading in a negative direction because the other one is a bit of is more of a wild child. So she is heading in a negative direction, and eventually in the movie she decides not to do what the other individual is suggesting to her that she do, which at 13 is probably becoming a sexually active at 13, probably not the best idea in the world. Hypnotherapy is one more strategy in attaining therapeutic objectives. It presupposes that competent therapists will make use of the insights their clients garner from the films. Films can influence behavior positively or negatively. By choosing from an anthology of therapeutically useful films, assigning them strategically, and establishing boundaries for the viewing, the therapist can minimize the risks. And this is a film made in the 2010s. It's called The Perks of Being a Wallflower. This is the individual that was a wallflower. He's a freshman in high school. He has tried to commit suicide, and so he starts high school and he meets Emma Watson's character, and this is her stepbrother who is gay. He's gay, and she's very, very popular. And they decide to adopt him. He's a freshman. That they decide to help squiring him around in the high school and taking care of him, making sure nobody picks on him and that kind of thing, because he's so vulnerable and he doesn't speak and he is a wallflower, and that's the idea. It is about him trying to fit into the high school world. It's a coming of age film. He obviously is depressed because he tried to commit suicide. Strange things happen. Anyway, strange things happen, and he tells Emma Watson that he's in love with her, and she said that she likes him too, but that it's not that kind of a situation. An interesting film. You watch this individual coming out of his shell. Film offers a wide range of interpretations determined by the specific needs of a client, by the directions a clinician gives for viewing, and by the connections that a therapist helps a client draw. Films are occasionally assigned to reinforce an idea introduced in therapy sessions, but they are more often intended to encourage internal search and insight by the client, and that's actually what you're hoping for. You're hoping that the individual will watch this film. They will potentially put themselves in that kind of a situation and say, "Wow, I sure wouldn't do that. That's self-destructive or whatever." It's kind of a funny story. Is about an individual that is put in a mental hospital, and while he is there, he's tried to commit. I think he tried to commit suicide, if I'm not mistaken. And this guy, Zach Galifianakis, adopts him and tries to help him. He starts dating, and this Keir Gilchrist starts dating Emma Roberts, or she becomes his girlfriend, and it's about him becoming healthy because now he has a relationship. I think that's what it's pretty much about. You guys can tell me how wrong I am. I've never actually seen the movie. And I've never seen the Wallflower movie. And I've never seen 13. But I have seen Garden State. It's one of my son's favorite movies. He was an actor slash bartender in Hollywood, and he was in a couple of films. So he likes movies because he was, thinking that he was watching them to see how people react. And now he's gotten 2 master's degrees and he's working in cybersecurity. So there you go. But he is in a couple of films. King of Staten Island, he has, what is his problem? He's got abdominal problems. He's got Crohn's disease. And he's also depressed and living with his mother, if I'm not mistaken. One of the reasons he's depressed is because his father was a fireman, and his father died when he was 9 or something like that. So Pete Davidson's character needs to resolve the fact that his father died as a fireman. And then his mother starts dating another fireman, and of course he doesn't want that relationship to continue. But he has problems, and his biggest problem is that he has never resolved the grief of losing his father. Cinema therapy does not require a therapeutic discussion of every assigned film. Although discussions usually follow film assignments, some clients experience strong emotional reactions but do not wish to talk about the film. The storyline may have hit too close to home, or the connections with the character may be too revealing. Often those clients immediately suggest a new way to resolve a problem without verbalizing or even knowing what led to the new idea. We treat their insight as if it were unmediated. Further discussion of the movie would be counterproductive. They've internalized the movie, and now they're doing what they need to do in order to help themselves. According to Bandura in 1969, the underlying assumption in assigning homework is that desired behaviors introduced in therapy sessions are practiced and mastered in a client's natural environment, leading to effective self-regulatory functions. Therapists introduce concepts, assign homework that will reinforce key therapeutic points in a process, the exercise and process the exercise in a follow-up session. And so assigning homework is something that has been done since the 1960s, 1970s. So assigning a movie to watch is good therapy. It's good. Homework is good therapy because we want them to think about their problem and how they can take care of their problem. And so cinema therapy is just another form of homework therapy. Homework helps therapy be more relevant to daily life. Through practice outside sessions, the effects of therapy can be generalized throughout the client's environment. Therapists use homework assignments in which clients practice new skills or reintegrate old ones as a technique by which connections may be made between the special setting of the therapy and the client's life. So this is just another arrow in your quiver, as it were. This is just another type of therapy that you can use to help your client, potentially. And it may not be that you can use this with every client, but it may be that you can use this with some of your clients, especially clients with depression, so that they can see what depression looks like. There are a lot of films that we're going to talk about in today's lecture that deal with people that are self-destructive and people that are depressed and have tried to commit suicide. But this isn't one of them. Cinema therapy combines realism and imagination. Films are selected to resemble the situation of a client, but through associations, the client derives a wealth of material beyond the content of the film. As clients watch films, they have internal conversations with the characters of a film. They reflect on the relationships they are viewing and think of actions they might take, similar or different from those of the character on the screen, to solve their own problems. This movie is Encanto. Just came out a couple of years ago. My grandson went berserk over this. He loved it. He watched it every time he came over. He watched Encanto. Especially liked the fact that you can't talk about Hugo. I think that was his name. This is Mirabelle. She is one of the daughters who does not get any magic. Everybody else in the family has magic, and she's the one that doesn't have it. So it would be a perfect movie for somebody who who comes from a very accomplished family, and they're not as accomplished, so they feel depressed about that. They feel like they've been cheated or something. It's about a family in Colombia. Mirabelle. These are her. This is her sister, and this is her sister, and where's her other sister? She's got three. The big one, the strong one. Oh, there she is, back here. Oh, holding the donkey. Yeah. Now these are her sisters. One of her sisters is very attractive. One can hear everything, and the other one is very, very strong. But she has no magical powers. Interesting movie. Compliance, although not every client will watch each film assigned, most clients will give this new approach a chance. It takes them by surprise, mostly because you're using something that they do every day. They watch television, they watch movies, and they do it every day. And because you are assigning them to do what they do, it takes them by surprise that if they look deeper into the movie, potentially, they may potentially be able to help themselves. This is a movie with Adam Sandler. Most of Adam Sandler films are comedies, but this one is about an individual with a gambling addiction, and it's called Untucked Gems. He owns a jewel store in Manhattan, and he owes somebody a huge amount of money, and he cheats somebody, and he tries to sell something that he thinks is worth a lot of money that turns out not to be worth as much money. And it's about him going through trying to save everybody, trying to be everything to everybody, and still maintain his gambling addiction. It's an interesting film. I've never seen it. Most of these films I've never seen. I've just read about them. Accessibility. Emotionally distraught clients may do better with film assignments than with books, whereas reading assignments require an ability to focus that depressed or anxious clients find difficult. Films require less concentrated attention. Adolescents in particular are almost always willing to watch a film. And this is Observe and Report. I've never actually seen this movie, and I forgot to look this one up. It's got Seth Rogen in it. Availability. Movie watching can be shared by families, even when other family members have not participated in therapy. This is Iron Man 3. He's suffering from PTSD and what else? He's suffering from insomnia. He's got insomnia. And so he stays up all night, and he makes more and more Iron Man outfits for some reason. I don't know. I'm not much of a Marvel guy. Curiosity, because the rationale for using films is carefully explained. Cinema therapy assignments seem logical to clients, but the films that are picked are sufficiently removed from the problem at hand to potentiate clients' curiosity. This is Paper Town. These two individuals have lived beside each other, and he's a nerd and a dork, and she's very, very popular and very, very attractive. His problem is that he's a wallflower, and her problem is that she runs away because she doesn't like what's happening in her house. Um, One day she runs away and doesn't come back, and he thinks that she has left him messages. Before she runs away, she takes revenge on her boyfriend and her boyfriend that was cheating on her, and the girl that he was cheating with, and the girl that didn't tell her about her boyfriend messing around on her. So she runs away, and she's gone for an extended length of time, longer than she's normally gone. And he decides uh, the other character, the male character, decides that she's left him messages, and she wants him to join her wherever she is. So he goes on a they're in Orlando, Florida, and he goes on this road trip to an imaginary place in New York called a paper town. It's a paper town because it is how can I explain this? It's something that map makers put on in certain spots on the map that don't exist. It's a town as if it were a town, just to create a point on the map, and these are known as paper towns. So he discovers that she might be at this paper town, and he goes to upstate New York looking for her, and eventually he finds her. Hey, Rox, what's up? Hello? Hey, a little bit, yeah. Okay, bye. Yeah. Okay. Familiarity. Films are familiar. That's a part of the vernacular of the client. Hence, they require no leap to a specialized language sometimes encountered in structured homework. This is a movie called Welcome to Me. It's an individual who is living on welfare, wins the lottery, and she wins $57 million. And she decides she's always had problems. She's a little strange, and so she decides that she's going to create a television program about her life and about her thoughts. And she calls it Welcome to Me. And she cooks and has a mess. She cooks, and everybody, and it's like a cult. Everyone starts to watch it, and odd things happen because she has other problems. Not explaining it very well. Never seen the movie. Anyway, rapport. Much of a client's life is outside the direct experience of the therapist. Films shared by clients and therapists deepen therapeutic alliance by providing an experience they have in common and by putting therapists and clients on more nearly level ground. And this is a movie called Matchstick Men. Nicolas Cage's character is obsessive compulsive. He is a confidence man, and one of the reasons he is so successful is because he is so um, picky. Anyway, Matchstick Men, and that's part of what's going on. Then this guy decides to rip off the master con artist. Um, anyway, that's all I know about Matchstick Men. Offering hope and encouragement, no film can be itself by itself reverse a negative worldview, but therapists can select films that begin in despair and end in triumph, thereby giving rise to hope. And this is known, or yeah, and this is a movie called The Skeleton Twins. They both have a problem. I'm trying to remember what the problem is. I just looked this one up. They are twins, and They live together. I don't remember now. I've looked up so many films that I'm getting them all mixed up. This one's got Kristen Wiig in it as well. Anyway, family is a cruel joke. I can't remember well. I can't remember. You guys can tell me about it. Reframing a problem, the meaning that any event has depends upon the frame in which it is perceived. When the meaning changes, the person's responses and behaviors also change. In practice, reframing occurs when a therapist draws different conclusions about an event than what clients have concluded. And of course, this is My Little Sunshine. It stars Alan Arkin, who just died not very long ago. But it stars Steve Carell and Kinnear. I can't think of his first name. Colette. That's the brother. He won't talk until he joins the Marines or something. And this is the little girl that is Little Miss Sunshine. Anyway, a family that's on the verge of a breakdown. They decide they're in Texas, and they decide that to go to. She has won a. She's going to be in the Little Miss Sunshine pageant, and so they have to drive all the way in 2 days. They have to drive from Texas to Los Angeles, and so it's about the family trying to make that happen. Greg Kinnear, that's his name, Greg Kinnear. And everybody has problems. They don't have any money. Grandpa's he's a drug dealer, I think. I think he is. Anyway, yeah, he's a drug dealer. Steve Carell's unsuccessful. Greg Kinnear is gay and is in the closet, I think, and has other problems. And of course, the mother is trying to keep everybody together, and it's just not working. Reframing problems. Reframes startle clients and cause them to reconsider earlier judgments. When therapists introduce respectful new perspectives, reframes serve to weaken the dominance of an unchanged meaning. Unchallenged meaning. The reformulations do not have to be profound. Modest reframes can lead to large therapeutic advances. A really weird movie. This is Fight Club. They they fight. They fight. And it turns out that, well, anyway, I won't tell you about that one. Providing role models. Some clients reared in emotionally impoverished circumstances have few mentors or guides. They want a better life, but have not met people who demonstrate qualities or behavior from which they can learn. Clinicians help such clients find mentors or may even serve the function of themselves. But role models for the specific issues clients are facing may not be at hand. In those cases, film characters are useful substitutes. And of course, this is Rudy. Rudy is a small individual, wanted to play for Notre Dame. He was too small to actually make the team. He made the practice squad. And inspired everybody on the team with his drive to be successful. And to him, success was playing in a game for Notre Dame. And he finally does his senior year, last game of the season. He gets to play in the final game and makes the final tackle and is carried off the field. And he's the only person, only Notre Dame football player ever to be carried off the field, as weird as that may seem. Anyway, he's an inspiration to us all because he had one goal in mind and he stuck to it, and he was able to achieve his one goal. Identifying and reinforcing internal strengths. Many contemporary therapists focus more on identifying internal resources than on exploring client psychopathology, building on strength rather than weakness. Viewed from this perspective, clients are not dysfunctional so much as they are unaware of their assets and the means by which they can access them. Silver Linings Playbook. He was in a mental hospital. This guy's character was, Bradley Cooper's character was in a mental hospital. Gets out, his wife divorces him. He wants her back, and in his trying to get her back, he meets this lady, and she tries to help him. That's Jennifer, whatever her name is. Anyway, they both have blue eyes. Anyway, yeah, he's got a problem. He becomes obsessed with getting his ex-wife back, and eventually, I've never seen the movie. Identifying and reinforcing internal strengths. Therapy helps clients recall forgotten or discounted resources and then facilitates opportunities for those resources to be applied. Films assist in reaching that objective by portraying fictional characters who resolve difficult problems, often with no personal skills than those possessed by the clients themselves. How does the leap from real life to real life take place? Usually through conversation in therapy. And this is Black Swan. It stars Mila Kunis, and Natalie Portman is actually the Black Swan. She's a prima ballerina, and she gets there are two. This is Swan Lake by Tchaikovsky. So they're going to dance Swan Lake, and there are two prima ballerina parts. One is the white swan, and the other is the black swan. And Natalie Portman plays. She gets abused by the director, I think. Well, I read I've never seen the movie, but she and Mila Kunis are after the same part, and eventually one of them becomes a black swan, the other becomes a white swan. They're both prima ballerinas, but she thinks that she murders Mila Kunis. She doesn't, of course. Instead, she stabs herself, as weird as that is. Anyway, so it's about her destroying herself in order to become one of the prima ballerinas. Potentiating emotion. Films trigger emotions and open doors that might otherwise be closed. It is one thing to talk about a problem and quite another to feel it. Particularly for clients who intellectualize, viewing a film that elicits emotion and connecting the film to personal situation enhances therapeutic conversations. And this is Girl Interrupted. It's Winona Ryder's first starring role and Angelina Jolie's first role. They are two individuals. The Winona Ryder's character is a cutter, and she has tried to commit suicide. So they put her in a mental hospital, and in there she meets Angelina Jolie's character, who is a wild child, doesn't go by any of the rules, and they eventually pair up together, along with other girls in the asylum, in the mental hospital, and they come in conflict with one another. Eventually, they come in conflict with one another, and there is a suicide in the film, but it's neither of these individuals are the suicide. I don't think. It's somebody else. Improving communications. Clinicians attempt to help clients communicate unfamiliar concepts to their partners, but a film can introduce understanding through readily grasped images. This is Ryan Gosling, and he was Lars and the real girl. The real girl is a blow-up doll that Lars starts dating. Lars won't talk, and he won't interact with anybody. And then one day he he finds a blow-up doll, or he gets a blow-up doll, and he starts to communicate with people. So the psychiatrist in town, this is a small town in the Midwest, the psychiatrist convinces everybody that they need to pretend that this girl is real, this blow-up doll, and eventually they get him to start, and because of this blow-up doll, he's interacting more with people, and everybody likes what's happening, and things are going much, much better. He keeps walking around with this blow-up doll. Eventually, the town tries to wean him away from the doll by having her do she has to go to board meetings and all this stuff. And so he starts seeing someone else. And eventually, of course, he weans himself off of needing the real girl in order to interact with people. So it's kind of cute, I guess. Prioritizing values. While Hollywood does not attempt to philosophically challenge the great philosophies or religions, social critics agree that popular films constitute one of the primary sources for the dissemination of cultural values in our time. This is a movie called The Dream Team. This is from the late 80s, early 90s. These individuals are in a mental hospital, and they decide to break out. I can't remember why they break out, but all these people have different problems. And while they're out, I think it was Michael Keaton's character needs to do something. And while they're out, their their problems actually help them get through the day. None of them are supposed to be uninstitutionalized, but because of this road trip that they take, they all heal themselves, or to some extent. Kind of an interesting movie. What therapists need for cinema therapy? Therapists should learn to watch films therapeutically so they can describe the process effectively to their clients. Therapists should assemble a list of therapeutic films. Therapists should think of films as co-therapists in the process of encouraging and utilizing insights. And this is about a man that is obsessive compulsive. That's a Jack Nicholson character. He eventually, and Greg Kinnear is his neighbor. Helen Hunt is the person one of the people he's obsessed with. He falls in love with her. She is a waitress at a restaurant, and he will only allow her to wait on him, and he has to have his food fixed specifically in a specific way. And Greg Kinnear is a gay man that lives next door to him. He gets beat up, and he has to go into the hospital. So Jack Nicholson's character has to take care of his dog. And eventually, of course, he falls in love with the dog. He falls in love with the dog. So when Greg Kinnear gets out of the hospital, for some reason they go to the seashore. They live in New York City. Anyway, it's about an obsessive compulsive individual that's obsessive compulsive, and how he fixes himself. Cinema therapy concentrates on characters and their relationships. Critical in cinema therapy is the process of change in and between characters. Clients are asked to pay attention to how characters reappear, appear at the beginning, and how they react to the conflicts they face, and how they are different at the end of the film. Clients should note how relationships improve or deteriorate through the film, what each character does to make things better or worse, and how the character appears to feel in response to changes. This is a movie called The Virgin Suicides. And in this movie, a group of, I think there's 3 or 4 daughters, and they're all controlled by their parents, their father and their mother, to the extent that they can't go out, they can't date anybody, and eventually what happens is that the parents finally let them go, and when they're living on their own, they commit suicide. Each of them in their own way. It's really kind of a strange film to read about. I have never seen the movie myself. In cinema therapy, the client is encouraged to articulate their identifications. Which character elicits the most and least personal identity? What behaviors would the client like to adopt? How are the issues similar to the client's own issues? Is a character's approach to problem solving like the client's? What feelings does a client associate with a character? Are those feelings familiar? This is Good Will Hunting, of course. It has Ben Affleck. Oh, wait a minute. It's got Robin Williams and Matt Damon are the two title characters. Matt Damon's character was abused as he's a genius. He can do math very, very well, and this becomes obvious to somebody to Stellan Skarsgård's character at Harvard, and so he tries to, because he is so brilliant in mathematics, he wants to bring him along, but he has obvious mental problems. He's violent, and so he takes him to Robin Williams, who is a therapist, to help him. And it is about Robin Williams and Matt Damon dealing with one another, and each heals the other, as it were, because Robin Williams has lost his wife and is still grieving and hasn't gotten over it. And Matt Damon's character was abused as a child, was physically abused, potentially was sexually abused as well, but that doesn't really come out. But he was physically abused to the extent that he becomes violent himself and fairly non-functional. So that's what has to happen. Clients are asked to consider the film's unique voice. How does the film's voice differ from the client's families or friends? And what new perspectives do they hear? What is the new message? What action does the film encourage? How viable are the ideas in the film? If these ideas are potentially useful, how can the client put them into practice? If the ideas are impractical, can they be modified to work for the client? And this is a movie called Risk Cutters, a Love Story. It's about it's about an individual who commits suicide, and he meets Shannon Sossaman's character, and they go on a road trip trying to figure out how to get out of purgatory. They're in purgatory because they've committed suicide, and they're trying to get out of purgatory. I've never seen the movie, but it sounds fascinating. Anyway, they drive around in purgatory trying to figure out how to get out. And eventually they make it. Almost any film the client likes can be used productively in therapy, but only if the therapist treats a client's preferences with respect and enters into the exercise with a sense of curiosity about why the client picked that film. This is Joaquin Phoenix's The Joker, or Joker. And of course, Joker has lots of problems. He's scarred, and therefore that has made him a antisocial, and that's behind the Joker. Therapists should think of films as material that will be internalized by clients and available for future reference. Clients remember characters from films and can repeat key phrases and sequences long into the future. And this is Inside Out. It's a Pixar movie about the emotions of a young teenage girl. The purpose in using film is to augment therapy. Therapists should not feel obligated to return to discussion of a film merely because it was assigned or because they are curious about a client's interpretation. Although several films can speak to a clinical problem, therapists will find a greater comfort in working with certain films rather than others. And this is American Psycho. It's about a serial killer, I believe. Clients who are functioning moderately well in their home and work or school environments and whose problems involve interpersonal components are ideal candidates for cinema therapy. Films can be used with individuals, couples, families, adults, adolescents, some pre-adolescents, but not so much. The Breakfast Club, old movie from the 1970s, 80s, I guess. It's from the 1980s, about five individuals coming together and forming a bond that helps them heal each other. Film should not be used with small children except in family therapy as a means of encouraging the family to do something positive together. Given a child's developmental limitations and our practice of discussing films a week after they are assigned, using cinema therapy with young children is usually not effective. And this is a movie called Turning Red. It's about an individual becoming a red panda and interacting with her family. These are her friends. It's actually about somebody changing, is what it's about. What happens to you when you become a teenager from being a preteen. So it can be about a lot of different things. It could be about, coming out of the closet if you're gay. It's a really fascinating movie. My grandson watched it, and he thought it gave him the right to be angry and to do things that he wasn't supposed, that people told him he couldn't do. This is when he was 9 or 10 years old when the movie first came out. So he saw the movie, and I took him to where did I take him? I took him to a place that had trampolines, and it was a huge place, and he yelled at me, and I told him he couldn't yell at me. I'm his grandfather, and he needed to respect me. So it was really kind of an interesting thing that this movie made him think that he was in charge now. It's really kind of odd. Anyway, clients with serious psychiatric disorders are not candidates for cinema therapy because clients usually view films in their own homes rather than the office. It is difficult to deal with issues that come up during or immediately after a viewing. And this is a movie called Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. This is in the future, and they are able to erase people's memories, and the Jim Carrey character is having his memory erased of his ex-wife, and I think his ex-wife is Kate Winslet. I may be wrong. Anyway, and the only thing that they've erased everything except their first date, and that's what he reflects on. And the reason his mind is spotless is because they take away all those memories. Risk to the great to A risk is too great to assign cinema therapy to clients who have trouble distinguishing reality from fantasy. In other words, if they are psychotic. But the risk is true as well for non-psychotic clients with severe symptomology. Therapists should not assign films that they believe in their clinical judgment might cause a client distress. This is a movie called Kevin. We need to talk about Kevin, actually. Kevin is psychotic, and he is antisocial, and he's violent. And for that reason, he's Tilda Swinton's son, and she is in denial about how bad he is. And that is the point of the film, I guess. Clients may not know when a film will be helpful, but they almost always know when it will be too hard to take. When clients are more vulnerable, describe the films in far more depth than with clients who are more resilient and less emotionally distraught. So the more severe the mental illness, if you're going to actually do cinema therapy with somebody with a severe mental illness, you need to really explain to them why you want them to watch the film. If their mental illness is not very severe, then they will pick up on whatever it is that you want them to pick up on. This is a movie called Still Alice. She is suffering from rapid onset Alzheimer's disease, and the idea is that she keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again in order to try to remember, try to fight off the Alzheimer's disease. So she's written down a script that she follows every day, and she keeps losing pieces of it, and that's the idea behind the movie. Cinema therapy assignments are very successful with couples. However, if there is a violence in the home, film assignments should not be used. Films should not be assigned to clients who have had recent traumatic experiences similar to the characters in the film. And the number 23 is about the 23 enigma, which is real bizarre. It's this idea that everything in the world is in 23s, or it has something to do with 23. The number 23. And Jim Carrey's character reads a book about this enigma, this 23 enigma. It's an old idea that comes out of the 1950s from a guy by the name of Burroughs. Burroughs was, I've got a book by him. I've got a series of books by him. He was a real strange character. He's one of the beat poets. He was a friend of Jack Kerouac's and Allen Ginsberg. And he had this idea that everything happens in 23s. So the number 23 is significant, and it becomes a conspiracy theory, and Jim Carrey reads the book and becomes obsessed with the number 23. And anytime something happens, he tries to figure out why 23 is part of what's going on. It's a real odd idea. William S. Burroughs is the guy's name. Don't read him. don't get involved in this thing. It's kind of like QAnon. It's just, you can tie things together, random things together, and make them fit just about any idea. If a therapist thinks that a certain character in a film fits the client's in ways that will be offensive, the therapist should not assign the film. If the client expresses a dislike of films in the intake interview, cinema therapy should not be used. This is a movie called Split. Fascinating movie. It's about an individual with 23 distinct personalities. He is suffering from dissociative identity disorder, where he has 23 different personalities. One of them is a monster, and for that reason, of course, strange things happen in this movie. It's a really, really interesting film. This one I've seen the last part of it. I've never seen the first of it. Since cinema therapy was developed, negative reactions to films assigned by therapists have been rare. The worst case scenario appears to be when clients indicate that a film seems off target and irrelevant to their needs. Usually a second film assignment will prove more successful, especially if the second film is chosen by the client. And this is a movie called Benny and June. Benny is the brother and June is his sister. She has a developmental problem. She lives with the brother. And one day, another individual, Sam, played by Johnny Depp, comes into her life, and he has problems of his own, and they fall in love. And of course, it's about Benny trying to protect June, and it's about Johnny Depp's character trying to romance this individual. He has developmental problems as well. Eventually, of course, things work out the way they're supposed to work out, I guess. In a client's choice of movies, the therapist can find clues to their working role models, ideal self-image, internal resources, potential goals, perceived obstacles, degrees of imagination and creativity, and overall philosophy of life. This is a book called This is a movie called The Notebook. It stars Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams as the young pair, and Jenna Rollins and James Garner as them later on in life. Jenna Rollins has Alzheimer's disease and she's dying, and James Garner reads to her from a notebook that the two of them wrote while they were falling in love when they first met. And and of course, when he reads from the notebook, then he turns into Ryan Gosling and she turns into Rachel McAdams. Okay, and that's the end. That's the end of the lecture. If you have any better way of describing these films, I haven't seen most of them. Strangely enough, as a matter of fact, I've only seen a couple of them. I've seen Going Red. I've seen Breakfast Club, of course. I've seen Inside Out. I've seen Good Will Hunting multiple times. I saw As Good as It Gets, Dream Team. What else have I seen? Oh my, Rudy. I've seen Fight Club, at least part of it anyway. I've seen Sunshine. What is this one? Little Miss Sunshine. I've seen Paper Towns. I've seen Iron Man, strangely enough. My daughter told me I had to see it. I've seen Encanto. And I've seen Garden State, I'm sorry. And that's it. The rest of them I haven't seen. Why in the world did I put why did I talk about these movies? I did because I looked up movies that that you might want to see if you that have mental illness in them. That's why I found these. So you guys can tell me about these movies and tell me how far off I was with them. I've seen part of Split, just the last part, strangely enough. Anyway, so I'll talk to you guys next week. We're going to talk about cinema therapy again next week, as much fun as that is going to be. So we'll see how things go next week.